Hello! Coming up today on The Mum Show, we're going to be talking about family conflict and how, as mums, we can be a part of managing a positive environment. So grab yourselves a pen and paper, get comfortable, and let's start the show. Hello, and welcome back here to the Mum Show Kitchen. My name's Marina, I'm your host today, and I've got with me child therapist Emma Brown.
Hello.
And Plaster Claire Hooper.
Hi.
Good to see you both again.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be talking about managing family conflict and all that brings. How can we avoid it? Can we avoid it? Should we avoid it? Let's get straight to the therapist to make sure I give the right answer.
Absolutely not. What I would say first and foremost is that we can't avoid it.
No.
It's everywhere, isn't it? And it's normal. And I'd probably, a bit controversial, I'd go as far as to say it's actually healthy.
I agree.
I agree.
Oh,
I'm
good.
so glad
That's
you're
right.
saying that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's completely normal, it's healthy. We are not going to, this episode is not about how do we get rid of conflict in our families. It's about how we manage it.
Yeah.
How can we use conflict to kind of enrich relationships,
Yes.
to kind of pull our family together, to feel more connected? Because I have to say, in my line of work, I work a lot with families, and actually some of the most, some of the families that struggle the most are those ones that don't manage conflict well.
Yeah.
That there's huge amount of anger and sometimes aggression within the conflict, or it gets completely brushed under the carpet and it doesn't get managed. It gets avoided and
Just
not
buried.
spoken about and buried. Absolutely.
Conflict is a place of vulnerability, isn't it? And we always say that, what's your saying, Claire? The bravest thing you can be is vulnerable.
Yes.
Or is it your saying? Who am I attributing
I think
it
it's
to?
Brené Brown,
Yes,
actually.
Brené Brown's saying. But it's that thing, isn't it? We need to be vulnerable to be able to process through something. And if we're not prepared to go there, and we're not prepared to do that because we're scared of the conflict,
Yeah.
then we're not going to reach those places with our families.
Yeah.
Don't you learn so much as well about the other person that you're talking to when you bump up against conflict? You realise you think one way and they think it. So you approach a situation very naturally, you don't stop and think about it, and then you realise, oh, they don't think like me. And it helps you to adapt, to I suppose like iron sharpens iron, to help rightly so, fit together better, mould together better.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
essential.
And I think as well, when our kids are in a place of conflict with us as their parents, I do enjoy the moment of them being able to form their opinion.
Yeah.
To be able to articulate what they need to say to me. And sometimes, I feel quite proud. I remember my daughter once saying something to me. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I realised in the way that she'd spoken to me that she'd put a boundary in place. Right. And in fact, I think she said to me, "That's not a kind way to speak, Mummy. You need to speak kinder than that."
Wow.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I could be really angry with you, like that could charge me up and be like,
Offend you,
how rude. But I thought, wow, she's really learning boundaries. Like she's learned how to make sure that people speak to her. So I think for our children, being able to conflict a little bit with us and express themselves is obviously very important.
Wouldn't life be boring if we all just agreed with each other all the time?
It would.
Yeah, we both agree with that. We're both with you there.
Yeah. It's interesting, in my house, when I think about the conflict that sometimes happens between me and my husband, it's often the way that we manage the conflict that almost is the biggest issue. I'm somebody who I get fired up quite easily. I'm probably more fiery and I have a shorter fuse than my husband. But then once it's dealt with and talked through and then I move on from it. I'm really, really quick at moving on. Whereas he tends to kind of hold on to things a little bit longer. And so I'm in a different space and expecting him to join me in that kind of, we've dealt with that, we've been able to talk it through, we've moved on from it. And actually he's still kind of holding on to it a bit and really struggling with it. So that in some ways can cause more conflict. So I think it's important for us to know and kind of tune into ourselves of how do we deal with conflict. And as I've said before, often those things are often things that we learn through our kind of birth families and how we were brought up. Have we been brought up in a family where conflict was okay, where it could be talked about, where it could be dealt with, or have we been brought up in a family where when conflict happens, people don't talk about it, or it's quickly moved on or brushed under the carpet and pretended nothing's happened. It's really important to kind of know our own story of conflict, really, our own narrative about it.
What was yours like growing up? How did you deal with conflict in your family?
We had 4 girls, so conflict was rife at times. You know, actually 4 opinionated girls. And I would probably say I was maybe less opinionated or less open with my... definitely opinionated, but maybe not as noisy about them. But I really enjoyed debate. And so then I'd have a really long debate after dinner, and my sister she was quite okay with conflict, but she'd get bored and she'd go, I'm done. I'm right, you're wrong. Off we go. And then she'd go, and then I'd be infuriated and I'd get really angry with her. But we did have a policy where you could talk about things, you could go through things, you couldn't insult, you couldn't label, you couldn't say you are this and you're that and blah, blah, blah. That wasn't allowed. And there was always... my mum, really young, used to say to us, you're made in the image of God and you're his child. So if you insult your sibling, you're breaking his heart. So that kind of meant there was only so far that we could go in an argument. But then I think we also had the whole don't let the sun go down on an argument. So it was always like, oh, should we make peace? You know, and that sort of thing. Which
doesn't mean you have to go to bed agreeing, it just means you have to go to bed in peace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really important. That scripture is misused. We must all agree now before we go to sleep.
Absolutely.
It's not. It's about saying, OK, we're going to choose to press pause on this, go to sleep in peace, and then work on it again maybe tomorrow.
But it's interesting because that stayed with me. And so if I have an argument with my husband, if we disagree on something, I'll always be like, oh, look, we'll sort this out later, but friends, yeah?
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, friends, right, come on, let's do this. And obviously we have to get in conflict all the time because we work together. And sometimes it'll be things where this is nothing to do with marriage. This is from a professional point of view. I say we go this way and he says we go that way. And you have to just kind of always root it back to the place that, but we're friends, but we love each other. So we really disagree on this, but okay, friends, and just remind each other of that a little bit.
We do the kiss test. If we've, we'll agree to disagree, but if you can kiss me, we really know that you've agreed to disagree. If you can, it's like there's a little bit more talking that needs to be done.
I like that.
That's really good.
That is good. We were the same growing up. I grew up in a family where there was high expressed emotion a lot of the time.
Really?
From both my parents towards each other, and often with 3 girls, 3 teenagers all at once. There was conflict between us as well. And conflict between parent and child. But there was always, my biggest memories are of those where at the end of the day we're sat down and my dad I learnt a lot from my dad because he wasn't afraid to show his emotion and he wasn't afraid to cry. And actually, kind of having that, going through that full range of emotions of the kind of getting angry and then actually, allowing that hurt and vulnerability to come out and then being able to kind of reconnect. And it's the reconnection bit, isn't it? We don't have to agree. We can kind of still think that I think this way and you think that way, but actually, we still love each other and we can still kind of come back and have
I think as Christians, we need to remember that happens in the Bible. I always find it really interesting in the New Testament because there is quarrelling and there's even like a separation at some point when I think it's Paul and I can't remember who he falls out with now. Is it Apollos? And they go in separate directions or you're going to have to go and check your Bibles on this one. This is an unexpected reference here. I have not got the chapter and verse. But we see conflict happen, but actually it doesn't mean there has to be hatred. It doesn't mean that you don't need to sin in that. You can actually disagree on that and not find a meeting of minds. And I think that often when we're trying to get that heart and mind of Christ, we don't have full revelation, and so we won't have full agreement all the time. And it's that within our family as well. I can think one way of doing things is right, but I haven't got full revelation of what perfect, harmonious family looks like. So my insistence on being right can easily be wrong.
That need to give up The driving need to control is what keeps conflict brewing.
Yeah.
I've got to control this. I'm right, you're wrong, and that is not healthy. Yeah. But when the power in giving up control and allowing somebody to help mould your thinking is the power of vulnerability, and it so unifies families.
What do you think the impact has? We're going to listen to some kids in a minute, but before we do, I'd just quickly like to ask, what impact do you think conflict has on a child? And I'm not just talking about mild conflict, a house that feels like a pressure cooker, where there is negative conflict that is happening on all the time and it isn't resolved, and they don't have that atmosphere. In that situation, what does conflict feel like to a child?
Well, I think, you know, we've talked a lot about kind of parents being a secure base and a safe haven, a secure base where they feel loved and safe and secure to go off and explore the world, a safe haven to come back to and reconnect, particularly during times of distress. So for children, you know, the home should really be the safest place for them, a place where they can kind of feel safe and nurtured and safeguarded against other things. But often, I mean, in my line of work, unfortunately, I work with this all the time with children who haven't got those, who don't have those experiences of home, where home is actually a really scary place to be. And if you think about when we've talked about the brain and being in the red zone and the green zone, and children who find it very difficult to kind of think and stay calm because of scary situations that are around them. If they're in a high stress environment, they're going to be working from their downstairs brain a lot of the time. So that they're going to be on high alert. We often talk about children who have hypervigilance, who are kind of all they're expecting conflict, they're expecting things to not feel safe, so they're kind of looking out for it all the time. And how on earth can children kind of learn and grow and develop when they're living in that atmosphere? So that's, I mean, we're talking about that's the extreme end, but even when there's kind of big times of conflict, if it's unpredictable, if it happens frequently enough, and if there's no resolution to it, that in itself can cause a child to really struggle in their development.
Yeah. So when an environment of conflict becomes toxic, as parents and as facilitators of that environment, we have an absolute duty to press in on that and say that's not acceptable, because that's when you're actually impacting the way your child develops.
Yeah, it's hugely damaging, actually.
Should we take a listen?
Yeah.
Let's have a look at what the kids have to say.
Mumjoy Kids, action!
What happens if you have an argument? What might you argue about?
Sometimes they're a bit bigger than others. Sometimes it's just like a little thing and then we just get over it. I don't think we really hold grudges in our family.
Well, we don't argue a lot either, but when it is, it's just like in a tiny room, or it's just between me and Grace.
We usually argue about what we're supposed to do sometimes.
When do you think it's okay to argue?
When you want your way. Well, actually, that might be bad. I don't actually really know.
Maybe if someone's just randomly told you off for something that you haven't done, and then maybe you might argue, but like say that you haven't actually done it.
Why do you think grown-ups argue?
I think grown-ups argue when they're in a mood or something hasn't gone right in the day and they just do it.
So like they're grumpy and don't want to talk, they just want to have some time by themselves, but then maybe someone else wants them for something, but they don't want to do it.
Do you think all families argue?
Yeah, at some stage our family should, well not should, but will probably argue. Because you're not always happy.
There's always something in life where you have to argue about something. You can't just always dodge out of it. It's just there. And sometimes you just can't help not doing it.
So how do you feel about somebody when you're having an argument with them? What does it feel like in your body?
Sometimes you might get that angry that you might want to physically hurt them. Also, you might just think at that stage, I hate that person and just not want to be around them. I feel angry because it might be things that I don't like people saying about me. I think people should still always love you, because no matter what happens, if say you're married, you should still love that person that you're with because that's why you got with them, because you like them.
What is the best way to end an argument?
Say sorry and then think about it.
To forgive them and maybe do something like shake it out, or maybe like take them somewhere nice. Sorry.
In your family, what do you all do together to help you stay close to each other and get along?
Do something that involves you all.
And then you can just have some like really nice family time and have moments that have memories that you'd like to keep.
Ah, they're good kids, aren't they?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I like those guys. It was interesting actually when I was interviewing them because it took quite a while to get to the point where they felt comfortable to say, conflict happens,
Yeah.
I get angry, and sometimes I feel like I hate them.
Yeah.
And that took a long time. I was talking for quite a while, and at one point I wasn't sure I'd get it.
Yeah.
Because they felt so much, we don't argue,
Yeah.
we love each other,
Yeah.
we wouldn't go there because it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Like
that
I know
common?
it's valuable.
Is that common in therapy? Getting
Yeah,
people to-
I think so. As well. I just think children's perception of sometimes conflict is a very negative one,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's
yeah.
don't, and it's, they probably associate it with getting into trouble as well, and or disappointing their
that's
parents. So there's a lot of kind of like shame. Is it okay to admit to this? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's that's why we have to normalise it, don't we? This is okay. You can fall out. I can see that right now you feel like you hate your sister, but let's talk about it. Let's just find out. Let's kind of think about what's
I mean,
happened.
if you fast forward that, when me and Matt sometimes will sit with couples that are wanting to look for therapy or help, we wonder why they take so long to come to us. We're like, you're really struggling. Why did you wait so long? Because they're embarrassed, because they think, well, we're married, we're Christians, we should know what to do. And sometimes they've waited so long that the help that they need is so much harder than if they just put in some, just some trusted friends or some conversations, or were able to own up to feeling like their conflict at each point they can't do it on their own.
And I do think that perhaps Christians feel that more.
Do you?
I do, yeah. It's just I work with Christians and non-Christians in terms of the therapy that I do, and I definitely feel like there's a kind of almost another layer of embarrassment or uncertainty about, is it okay to have conflict?
Yeah.
And is it okay to struggle? Should I be sorted?
Gosh, that's so true.
Yeah.
People always feel like that, and they come then thinking, well, you're another couple and you look like this and your marriage looks like that, and we're quick to tell them, hey, fly on the wall in the hoop house. You would not want to live with us.
I think sometimes in families we can have almost like a pressure cooker, can't we?
Yeah.
And somebody can wake up. I know that if I'm in conflict with one of the children and I can see that I'm struggling with that, that can have like repercussions of everybody else on the family, and all of a sudden I can turn around and be sharper with my husband, and you can just get a culture brewing in the family, can't you, that all of a sudden you're just like, why are we all screaming? Why is everybody shouting? Why is everybody cross with each other? Why is everybody short with each other? Where on earth has our peace gone? And that isn't actually about having vulnerable conversations with important conflicts. That's just about people becoming snappy and irritable and short-tempered and losing grace for each other. And I think if we think about that, because that's really normal in families.
Really normal.
Like every family has
stuff.
that. But it's not actually a pleasant place to live, to be in that, and it isn't productive to be in a place where we're irritable and short-tempered and just bashing into each other. And it may not be because there's like some real serious things that need sorting. It's actually just like a lack of control of ourselves and a lack of tolerance.
Or a cultural thing that kind of slips in. If you look, it doesn't take long. I found, and I've had to challenge this with my girls recently. They're trying to negotiate the transitions of Libby becoming a teenager and Erin kind of struggling with, well, you're not playing with me anymore, and that loss and grief that she's going through, and that sometimes comes out with her trying to gain some control and being really bossy, and she can the way that she speaks to Libby at times because of her pain is not okay. And I've kind of, but it's not taken long for that to just become almost normal. And actually, no, hang on, this is not how we communicate in this house. What is going on? Let's bring it back. We've got to, if we can't be kind of show compassion and kindness in our homes, then we're not going to be able to do it out there, or we're going to be more vulnerable out there.
We have a tool that we use in our family now. I bumped into it a number of years ago during my pastor, and it's called the drama triangle. And it's a triangle, and at the bottom of it is, in fact, everybody in this triangle feels like a victim, for starters. And it's whenever you hit a crisis point in a conversation or a relationship, you cast somebody in a role. And the author of this tool says that you all start at a certain gate. So you might start as the feeling like the victim. This is who I am. Life's never going to change. I'm always going to be down here. And it forces you, another person, to feel like they have to fix things for you. So they might feel like they need to rescue that situation by the way that you're behaving. And then before you know it, you're there. And then actually then you have the other corner of things that would be called the persecutor or the bully. And in a conversation, you can find yourself going round this model all the time. You always do this. You never do that. Oh, you make me feel really bad. Why do you speak to me like that? And you go round this triangle of drama, and it's living like a powerless person. That's not the model that Jesus gave us to live. We are overcomers, so our triangle should look like this. At the top, you're an overcomer. This is a difficult situation, but of course I can get through it. I can hold my own, I'm all right. Somebody who might feel like they want to rescue that situation and swoop in and, seagull parenting or seagull-like moments, save it, then needs to become somebody who can say, actually, I'm going to champion you. You've got this. It's all right, this is difficult, but I'm not going to step in. And the role of the bully or perpetrator becomes someone you can champion. Do you know what? This is not right. It's not okay to behave like that. It's not okay to speak to me like that. But I reckon, actually, if we talk about it, we can fix it. It's really quick. I'm sure you can Google it, but it's a great model, and we use it in our family. I'll say to my kids, where are you on the drama triangle at the moment? How do you feel? Do you feel powerless, or do you feel powerful? Because you are not a victim, and conflict can often breed you to feel like you are powerless in your own family. And your own family should be where you feel like you're the most powerful.
Yeah, that's
Rant
really
over.
good. No, I like that. It's something to stick on the fridge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just pull down and really, really visual.
And where am I on the drama triangle?
Yeah.
How do I feel now? Do I feel powerless, or do I feel powerful?
Because actually, as mums, we can easily rescue, can't we?
Oh.
Yeah, we often do take on
I
that
can
role,
do
don't
it for
we?
you.
Yeah.
I can fix it. Oh, Dad, he's such a bully. He gets in the way. Don't speak to the kids like that, you know. Or don't speak to your sister like that, and she just needs to stand up for herself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For me, I know a strategy that really, really helps when we're kind of thinking about conflict, particularly in the therapy work that I do, was two key concepts, and it's probably ones that we talk a lot about on this show. And the first one is insight. So that is the tuning in. So kind of really when you've had a conflict with somebody, or when there's either if it's a one-off big argument or whether it's something that's kind of brewing or been around for a long time. And this isn't just necessarily within your immediate family. It could be with an in-law, it could be with your own parents or siblings or somebody from outside of the family. But it's kind of really questioning what is really going on, because often, the arguments are about the surface level stuff. It's, you've not emptied the dishwasher again. Why don't you empty the dishwasher? And actually, that could be about something else. It could be about something that's underlying that. So I think it's really important to kind of recognise what needs am I trying to kind of maybe get met by having this argument. I know for my husband and I, a lot of our conflict is about kind of household stuff, because it is for most of us. We're a really busy family, and we see things differently. So for me, keeping a house tidy isn't necessarily the top of my priority, but actually for Dave, he sees me looking after the house as me caring for him.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
And so when I'm not emptying the dishwasher in the right way or not loading it in the right way, and I'm thinking, my goodness, just because I've put the plate in the wrong way round, why are you getting so angry with me about that? And I'm feeling hurt. But for him, he interprets that as you don't care enough about what I need and think about to do that for me. So tuning in, insight is incredibly important. And then look at the other side. So try and put yourself in the shoes of the other person, whether it's your child, whether it's your spouse, whether it's somebody else. what might be going on for them, what's their story, what are their drives, what needs are they trying to get met through this. And I think if you've got insight and empathy, you're much more likely to have a much better understanding of what's going on with the conflict, and therefore better equipped to deal with it and to find strategies that are going to change things.
Yeah. I like that, what you were saying there about being in the other person's shoes and seeing them like that. There's a scripture actually, and it's in 1 Corinthians 3, it's 16 to 17. And it says, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple." Now, I know that this refers to the church, but actually, if you look at the way you see each other within your family, it's like, why would I destroy you? You're a temple of the Holy Spirit, and God is working through you. Why am I going to want to pull you down in that place? And when you start to think like that, it can kind of increase that empathy and that level of understanding to say, well, what's going on with you at the moment? Because it's in my interest. Together, we are that temple. So it's in my interest that you're okay. It's in my interest that if you're feeling broken, that we look into that, because together we are the temple. And it harms me if you're not okay.
Absolutely.
It does. Unless the Lord builds the house, the labour is in vain. You know, like, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord together. It's a collective. There's power in the unity of your family.
Absolutely. Do you know what's really strange? I woke up this morning with that verse
in
my mind, and I was thinking, what's that about? And it's so interesting that you've just said that there.
We used to have it printed on the wall in our house when we first got married, because it was such a valuable scripture to have the basis. No, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. As for me and the house, we'll serve the Lord.
And I guess for me, it's about prioritising your immediate family, your children, your relationship with your spouse and your relationship with your children. So often we can get pulled in to other conflicts that are outside.
Absolutely.
And that it pulls our attention, it kind of adds to our stress bucket, and it absolutely impacts on the time and energy and space that we have to invest in our relationships. And I'm certainly not saying close the door and don't go outside and reach out to people. But I think when you recognise that there are toxic relationships that are having an impact on your family functioning, it's at that point that you need to think, right, what are the boundaries that we as a family need to put in place to keep our little system safe? Because actually, if we're strong, then we're much more likely to be able to kind of reach out and model that. And model that unity, model that ability to resolve conflict for those of us, for those people who are looking in on us.
Absolutely. So helpful.
Not easy though, not easy, because the pulls to us, particularly if it's birth family stuff and or it's in-laws, it's the pulls are incredibly strong.
Not easy, but worth it.
It is worth
absolutely. So if there was somebody watching at the moment, Claire, you're a pastor, you've done this a lot with some families. You've helped a lot of parents, you've helped a lot of married couples as well. And if somebody is sat there thinking, I recognise this right now, and we are in that environment where it just feels narky and toxic and like there's just a lot of stress, what do you think is a good habit buster in that?
I always encourage you to find a trusted friend to talk it through, just to check that you've got the right perspective first of all. Sometimes I'll say to my friends, have I got the right angle? Am I misinterpreting this? Is this something that needs help? And then find somebody to go to talk to together. If you've got to the place where mediation is not just something to do when you've reached an end point and you want to separate. It's really healthy as a couple, early intervention to go in there. And I also think it's really key for you to allow, if it's impacting your family, to allow your children to see the whole process. So not just mum and dad shouting and yelling and having conflict and then disappearing to opposite rooms. How you work that conflict out, how you apologise, how you make up is really key for your kids to learn that when you reach those points of what looks like no return when you're a kid, that's like awful and unthinkable. There is always hope and a way back. And mum and dad modelled to me that they did it didn't quite go to plan, and said sorry, and they've worked it out and they've made up.
That's brilliant. I love that advice. Thank you. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the episode today. We will be back on The Mum Show very soon. Take care.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at promisecollective.co.uk. Bye!